Predict, pick, and prevail in your fantasy football leagues with Nick Giacobbe and Nick Cap. From breakouts to busts, superstars to sleepers, these are the guys that will help you achieve fantasy glory. This is the PrimeTime Fantasy Podcast.
Welcome everybody to Season 2, Episode 51 of the PrimeTime Fantasy Podcast, where we give you our predictions, our picks, with the hopes that we help you prevail throughout Week 10 and the rest of the 2022 fantasy football season. I'm your host, Nick Giacobbe. Joining me is Nick Cap. Nick, Week 10, that just scares me. I don't know. I don't like saying that. I really don't.
Double digits. It is weird. I feel like it did fly by a little too quick.
I don't like it. I mean, I just feel like the football season flies by faster than any other sport. And maybe it's because you wait the entire week and then it just ends so quickly within a day. But I don't love it. I don't love it at all.
What's scary to think is like some people only got like 4 or 5 weeks of fantasy football left. And then it's over. That
is true. Hopefully not
unless you've been listening to the PrimeTime Fantasy Podcast.
Yeah, if you've been listening to us the entire season, hopefully you have playoffs. Playoffs on your horizon. And it's our Tuesday show, so we got some news to talk about. It's waiver wire Tuesday. Got to set your waivers by probably midnight tonight. So we're gonna give you our waiver guys for this week that could help you get to your playoffs. And lastly, we're going to do stash or trash. We tell you which guys you could cut, which guys you're not going to need for your playoff push. That will be taking place, in a couple weeks. With that said, if this is your first time listening to us, thank you so much. We do this show on Mondays, Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Fridays, plus a live show on Sundays. For the Tuesday show, like I said, we do a news segment, give you the waiver wire players for that week, and we do stash or trash at the end of it. Sometimes another segment in there, depending on the week. With that said, thank you to everybody again that tuned into our live show this past Sunday. We appreciate that. And if you're listening to us for the first time from that, thank you so much. You can find the weekly shows on our audio streaming platforms, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Anchor, Google Podcasts, basically anywhere where you find the podcast. You can find us, the PrimeTime Fantasy Podcast. If you're listening on iTunes or Spotify, please give us a 5-star rating and a review. We'd appreciate that. If you'd rather listen and watch the show at the same time, go to our YouTube channel, PrimeTime Fantasy Podcast. Hit that subscribe button. Drop a like on this video. Drop a like on any video that you watch. We'd appreciate that. Thank you guys for all the love on our YouTube channel. Keep connecting with us on social media. PrimeTimeFFPod, Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. And then PrimeTime Fantasy PrimeTime Fantasy Podcast on Facebook and YouTube. Starting off with the injury updates and the news. First off, Aaron Jones with an ankle injury, x-rays and tests came back negative. Should be able to play next week against the Dallas Cowboys in a pretty horrific matchup. His teammate over there on the Packers, Romeo Doubs, with a high ankle sprain. Looks like he's going to be out 4 to 6 weeks. I think he's droppable.
Yeah, no, I agree. There's no point you're going to feel comfortable with him anymore.
I'm not even putting him on stash or trash. We're just both saying drop him.
Yeah, cut him.
This news could end up being big later on in the week. Josh Allen suffered an elbow injury in the game against the Jets. He looked like he's like shaking his elbow almost like before that last play. I know Nick was at the game, but before that bomb to Gabriel Davis that may have had some pass interference on it.
No, there was none on that. There was no holding. Nah, that you didn't watch it then.
I did.
No,
I did.
Every single analyst, everybody, even Bill's analysts were saying it wasn't PI.
Really? My Twitter timeline was all saying it was.
Yeah, the instant reaction because everybody said he held him because you only saw one camera angle. When you saw the other, you saw. I only saw the one camera angle on the red zone. Sauce clamps. Come on.
Anyway,
come on. You can't try and slide that dig in there. Anyway.
Well, I'm sliding. I'm just saying. If that game's played in Buffalo, they get a flag, and you know it.
No, that's not true. They let him play all game.
If that game is played in Buffalo, that flag comes out.
No.
That's not a Jets dig. That's any team in the league.
It was clean.
I don't think there's many.
I hear salt coming from here.
No, I'm not salty at all.
No,
it didn't affect me at all. Why is there salt? Why would I be salty?
Because you know that you don't have the best rookie cornerback in the class.
That's okay. We had the best rookie class overall.
No, you did. That is. I'll give you 5 seconds to make that stupid take.
Yes,
that
is
terrible.
Yes, we did.
Terrible.
Yes, we did.
The Jets have arguably a top 2 receiver from the class, the number 1 corner from the class, a top 5 edge rusher from the class, and that doesn't include the best running back in the class who just went down for the season.
I was just watching NFL Game Day this morning, and they said Seattle had the best draft class next to
the Jets.
No, it wasn't the Jets. It was a different team that they mentioned. It was the Patriots. They said the Patriots reloaded really well too.
Come on now.
Yes, they did. Yes, they did.
Well, maybe they said that, but they're fucking idiots. That's
all right.
Ridiculous.
Anyway, I am not salty with the Jets at all. Anyway, going back to the injury, Josh Allen suffered an elbow injury before that bomb that he threw. It's damage to his ulnar collateral ligament, his UCL. I should have just said that, and related nerves. McDermott did not have an update today. That was the update. He hopes to know more by Tuesday, so later on today. I don't know if you want to touch on this too much, but I feel like he'll play Sunday. If he's got to be out, he's got to be out. But I think it's going to take a lot for him to not play Sunday.
Yeah, he's going to play through. Like, they're fighting for the 1 seed. If they lose, they're not. Kansas City has the third easiest schedule the rest of the season. That's their only competitor for the title. And you could see the Bills need Josh Allen after that week. So
I think they have both of our teams on the schedule, Kansas City.
They do. Do they have the Jets? No, they don't have the Jets.
No, you play Denver's division, don't you?
That's because we were the same seed. We were both the 4th seed in the division.
All right. So then you don't have Kansas City. The Seahawks do have Kansas City. All right. Frank Reich was fired today, and they replaced him with Jeff Saturday as an interim head coach, former offensive lineman. He's in their Ring of Honor. He's also never coached an NFL game before in any fashion. No offensive coordinator role, no offensive lineman head coach role. He's never coached a game before, and he's their head coach. The football fan in me says this is a really dumb decision. The fantasy fan in me says, well, if he's a former offensive lineman, maybe they want to run the ball more with him. So maybe this is good for Jonathan Taylor.
I thought it was such a terrible decision. I mean,
it is.
I saw a list of the slew of quarterbacks that he's been given. He started with Andrew Luck. Luck retired on him. Since then, it's been miserable quarterback like Jacoby Brissett, Sam Ehlinger, Matt Ryan, Carson Wentz, Phillip Rivers, and a bunch of other bums backups in between. He's never had a chance to thrive. And the Colts have always been competing for a playoff spot, even after Andrew Luck left. I think the first year or second year they didn't, based on the 2-week notice. But this was terrible. I mean, the Colts have had a top offense. They had a top offense last year with Jonathan Taylor. They always knew how to get the ball down the field. It made no sense. I didn't understand this from Irsay.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like they're going to be a bottom 5 franchise for the next 5 years. They're not going anywhere. They're in the dirt right now. It's really bad. All right. Elijah Mitchell's been designated to return from the IR. Nick calls him the best handcuff in fantasy football, which probably could be true, depending on McCaffrey's health. How rostered do you think Elijah Mitchell should be?
100%. Because I saw AJ Dillon at this point is still 70% pre-Aaron Jones injury. So if AJ Dillon deserves to be rostered, there's no doubt Elijah Mitchell does, after being on pace for a 1,000-yard year had he stayed healthy last year.
All right. PJ Walker is going to start Thursday night versus the Falcons. Sam Darnold was also activated off the IR, so they have Sam Darnold, PJ Walker, and Baker Mayfield at their disposal. Really bad, I guess a good match. Really bad defense, but a good matchup for the Carolina Panthers. PJ Walker won that game against the Falcons. I think he did, or did he lose that game 2 weeks ago?
No, they lost in OT.
They lost in OT. Okay, but PJ Walker played well in that game, I should say, 2 weeks ago. So there's that. Lastly, David Njoku with a high ankle sprain was supposed to miss 3 to 4 weeks. He missed 1 week, had the bye, and he's saying that he's going to play this week against the Miami Dolphins. And I think that's a pretty big game for them. So, if he plays, I think he could be in your lineup. If he doesn't play, he doesn't play. So we'll see how that goes.
Yep.
Going to the waiver wire. We're going to talk about some guys that you may want to roster, or maybe you don't want to roster. But these are guys that you may want to consider rostering that can help with your playoff push. First off, quarterbacks. Justin Fields is only owned in 47% of ESPN leagues. I'll let Nick speak about him, but Fields should be owned at 100% after this week.
Yeah, over the last 3 weeks, Justin Fields has been the QB1 in fantasy football. Over the last 5 weeks, I think he's averaging the second most points per game to Josh Allen, and I think it's only by half a point or something like that. He might even have the lead on Allen. But he's been such a monster for fantasy. He is a league winner. If you need a quarterback, if you have a quarterback you're questioning playing, as of this point, Justin Fields seems to be a must start. And you won't look at the passing numbers and see it, but over the last 5 weeks, 8 rushing. Well, actually, through the entire season, he hasn't had a game with under 7 rushing attempts. Since week 3, he hasn't had a game with under 47 rushing yards. Over the last 3 weeks, 3 rushing touchdowns on the ground. He's been electric, and I don't think anyone saw this coming from Justin Fields. So kudos to him. He's playing real football better, and for fantasy, he's a QB7 on the year. So he's probably going to finish in the top 10 with a fairly easy rest of season schedule. And even in the tougher matchups at Dallas and at New England, he posted 23 and 26 points. So I'm not saying he's matchup proof, but he is teetering because his workload alone and what percent of that offense he takes up has been delivering, and I don't see them moving away from it.
I'll say this. I don't care who your quarterback is. I think you should pick up Justin Fields as a backup. I think he should be owned if he's available on your waiver wire, I think you should pick him up because I don't care if you have Mahomes. I don't care if you have Josh Allen. I don't care if you Hurts. There's going to be a week where Justin Fields is a better matchup. Play the matchup. And I don't care who your quarterback is. Justin Fields is going to end up, he's quarterback 7 right now. He could end up being a top 5 fantasy quarterback by the end of the year. So I think he needs to be a top priority. Unless you really need one of these running backs or receivers or tight ends, I think he has to be a top priority.
So I have a question.
What do you want to say? I'm sorry. Yeah.
I have a question for you. So you said in there that you would pick up Fields even if you had someone like Josh Allen and play the matchup. So Josh Allen, the last 5 weeks of the fantasy season goes at New England, plays the Jets, Miami, easier defense, at Chicago, who's been tough, and then at Cincinnati, who's been tough on quarterbacks. Let me pull up Justin Fields' schedule for that playoffs. Do you actually think if you owned Josh Allen, and I don't think you own him in any leagues, would be willing to start Fields over him? His matchups are over those weeks. He has Green Bay, bye, Philly, Buffalo, and then at Detroit championship week.
I would need to see the schedule side by side, but it sounds like to me that he has Green Bay or Josh Allen has New England. I would not play Fields against Green Bay. I would not play Fields against Philly. Who else does he have?
Buffalo and then Detroit.
Wouldn't play Buffalo.
The next 2 weeks are the big weeks. It's Detroit and Atlanta. Those are the 2 monster weeks. Then he has the Jets, who the only real quarterbacks I struggled against is mobile, so he should be able to deliver fantasy numbers there. And then his playoffs are tough up until Detroit. So I think we're kind of both on the same page for those matchups. You're playing him over.
Yeah, I mean, it's easier if you have a really super duper elite quarterback like Hurts or Allen. I still think it's worth picking him up. What if one of those guys goes down? You know, Josh Allen might miss a week or two with this injury, and it could linger. Stafford doesn't look right, and it's because of his shoulder. Or something's up with Stafford's shoulder. So I'm just saying, like, if Fields is out there, I would go get him.
Okay.
Also, if you're not confident in your quarterbacks, Deshaun Watson is only owned in 21% of leagues. He's going to play Week 12 versus Houston, his former team. We're going into Week 10, so your window to pick up Deshaun Watson is closing. I think in smarter leagues, if when your players are tapped in, I think this is the week that he's going to get picked up. If you're in a league that people are not really tapped in, I think you got one more week. But I think by next week he has to be picked up. So that's up to you guys. Moving on to running backs. Jeff Wilson only owned in 44% of leagues. He played 50% of snaps in his first game with the Dolphins, and he had more fantasy points than Raheem Mostert. Other running backs, Gus Edwards is only owned in 37% of leagues. I know he's injured. He missed Monday night's game, but he was very effective before the injury. I think he's a guy you could stash with J.K. Dobbins, presumably out for most of the season, if not the entire season. Moving on to wide receivers, I don't have the numbers here. Ownage percentage for these first two. Terrence Marshall, he has 15 targets in the last 2 games. Last game against the Falcons, he went 4 for 87, 12 fantasy points. Wan'Dale Robinson has double digits in 2 of his last 3 games. The only game he didn't was against the Seahawks. He's averaging 5 targets over the last 3. Has Houston next. And Donovan Peoples-Jones is only on 12% of leagues. In 5 straight games, he's been over 9 points. In 4 out of those 5, he's been over 10. He's averaging over 5 targets since week 3. I think he's a must-own going forward. Also, Odell Beckham Jr. is only owned in 19.8% of leagues. Same with Deshaun Watson. I think that window is closing really fast. If you have an extra bench spot and you're a lower waiver priority, go pick him up. Mecole Hardman, 36% of leagues, and those are your wide receivers. On to tight ends. Cole Kmet is only owned in 27% of leagues. He had his breakout game of the season on Sunday, and he has the Lions next week, worst defense in football against the pass. And lastly, Greg Dulcich was on bye, but 3 straight weeks before the bye, he had over double-digit fantasy points. So, Nick, let me ask you. You could touch on these guys if you want, but I'm just gonna let you go. Your top 5 waiver targets for Week 10.
So I already talked about Fields. I think Fields is one of those top 5. Of course, if you need a quarterback, he becomes a higher priority. But to me, the number one waiver wire pickup is going to be Jeff Wilson. He's very familiar with the 49ers offense, and as Nick coined him last week, the Miami 49ers, or was it the San Francisco Dolphins? I forget.
Oh, they're the Miami 49ers.
Yeah, so Miami 49ers, that coach knows that running back very well. In his 9 carries, he had 51 yards. He's going to see increased workload. He also got 3 targets, the most he had in any game this season, with only a 50% snap share. So Jeff Wilson will probably seep more into 70% next week. And at that point, he is going to be an electric piece in a very, very high volume, high scoring offense. I think Jeff Wilson has to be owned. I think he has the chance of being a league winner. And I don't see an argument against Jeff Wilson after his first week, after the trade, putting up this, a good fantasy day, but it really his second best of the season. So I think he has to be rostered. Another guy I love, Nick touched on him, Donovan Peoples-Jones. I do think he has another guy with a league-winning upside, and his ceiling hasn't been too high, but Deshaun Watson was able to give Will Fuller and DeAndre Hopkins top 10 seasons up until Will Fuller was suspended. I could see Amari Cooper and Donovan Peoples-Jones replicating that with no problem. Once Watson gets back, it's going to take him a couple weeks to get back into the groove, but that's going to take 3 weeks. 3 weeks is enough to get to your fantasy playoff. So Donovan Peoples-Jones in those 3 weeks has a lot of upside and will be a matchup-dependent play. Another guy I really love and I added to the list was Mecole Hardman. Over his last 5 games, his floor has been 12. He has 5 targets, 4 targets, 4 targets, 9 targets, has a touchdown in the last 3. Over the last 2 games, he's averaging 24 points. He's seeing work in the rushing game as well. So they're using Mecole Hardman in ways that they weren't able to before. The reason I have him lower on this list is because I do think Kadarius Toney is going to eat into his snap share a little bit. But Mecole Hardman hasn't shown a reason to bench him over his last 4 games. I know that there's been a lot of doubt from years past with him being the 3rd, 4th, 5th option on the team, but right now it looks like he's the number 3 behind Juju and Kelsey. So based on those, I think that was 4 that I gave. I'll give a 5th real quick. I would probably go with Greg Dulcich. 3 consecutive games, 10+ points. I'm pretty sure he's averaging the 4th or 5th most fantasy points per game at the tight end position. That's more than enough for a roster spot, someone that should be owned. So if I have to put them in order, I would probably go Jeff Wilson number 1, Donovan Peoples-Jones number 2, Mecole Hardman number 3, Fields 4, and then Greg Dulcich 5. Of course, if you need Fields, if you need quarterback or tight end, they jump to the number 1 spot.
All right. I'm actually going to go with Justin Fields number 1. I think he's a priority add this week. My number 2, I'm going to go with Donovan Peoples-Jones because I think he has the highest upside in the next 6-7 weeks. Number 3, I'll go with Jeff Wilson since he's a position of need, but I think he's still in a committee, and Raheem Mostert hasn't looked bad this season, so I don't think he just gets 100% phased out of the offense. Number 4, I'll go with Terrence Marshall. I like his matchup this week. I like these assume the number 2 role in Carolina. I don't think that there's a lot of love to go around there, but I think he's one that should also be added. And number 5, I will also go with Greg Dulcich. Moving on to stash or trash. To make room for some of these players, you got to trash some guys, and I will give a reminder that with this segment, we're not telling you just to drop people. We're telling you if you need a roster spot open, these guys that we say are droppable are droppable. Some of these may be quick because me and Nick have spoken about these guys the last few weeks. First off, Robert Woods had 0 fantasy points and he played the entire game. He's owned in 58% of leagues still. Like, he shouldn't be on rosters.
It's another one of those name value things,
yep.
Right? Like, there's no reason.
Marcus Valdes-Scantling, 51%.
Yeah, there's no way anymore.
Yeah, I wouldn't want him.
It was a pipe dream.
Hunter Renfrow at 54%.
Yeah, cut him. I don't think he's had a double-digit game all year.
Maybe. I don't think so either. Matt Collins has looked better than him.
Yeah.
Deion Jackson at 73%.
I'm still rostering him. As Nick said, like, it doesn't matter. Like, they're going up against the Patriots. They're going to take him away from the game. I thought his workload would outdo it, but it didn't. But more weeks than not, they're not playing a Patriots defense. They're not playing Bill Belichick. I think they will be better in weeks to come. And as Nick said, offensive coach might be first time, but offensive line coach is going to know how to run the ball. So
he has the Raiders next week. If he's starting, he's a big start, but we won't know if he's starting until later on in the week. But I would keep him up until the Jonathan Taylor news is released. Nyheim Hines at 57% in his first game with the Bills had 0 fantasy points.
He's still worth the roster for one more week.
I would cut him for like anybody we just mentioned.
Yeah, I agree. I think pretty much every player we listed, I would rather roster him in. But I mean, you don't need to drop him. Like I wouldn't prioritize dropping him.
Brian Robinson at 56%.
It's another thing where I don't know if you can drop him because the workload's there, but there's going to be no point where you feel comfortable playing him. I like if it was him and Jeff Wilson, I'm taking Jeff Wilson all day.
Is the workload there? Because in 5 career games, he's a double-digit fantasy points twice, but one of those games is a touchdown, so he's only had 1 game with double-digit fantasy points without the touchdown. So
the point is the workload's there. Like he's on the field too much.
I guess. I mean, I wouldn't rush to drop him, but if I could get like Jeff Wilson or Donovan Peoples-Jones and I'm deeper in running back, I wouldn't just keep him on my bench. Okay. Drake London at 77%. I think it's time to cut him unless it's a keeper league. He hasn't a double digit since like week 2.
Yeah, I hate saying it, but if you told me Drake London or McCole Hardman or Donovan Peoples-Jones, even Terrence Marshall or Wan'Dale Robinson, I'm probably taking those 4 rest of the season. And I hate to say it.
Khalil Herbert at 62%.
No, I'm still not dropping him.
I wouldn't drop him either, but this is a bad game for the Bears rushing attack. Besides Fields. Tyler Higbee at 89%. He had 0 fantasy points.
I'd take Greg Dulcich over him. I would not take Cole Kmet over him.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. Eno Benjamin at 67%. James Conner returned this week. None of the running backs look good, but Conner played on 72% of snaps. I would cut him. He's a backup running back in a system that they like James Conner in anyway.
Yeah, I think so.
And lastly, Clyde Edwards-Helaire at 90%. Here are the snaps for Kansas City. Jerick McKinnon played 62% of snaps, had 10 fantasy points. Isaiah Pacheco played 22% of snaps. I think he had 1.2 fantasy points. And then Clyde Edwards-Helaire at 17% snaps played. I
would for Jeff Wilson.
Take the name away. I think I would too. Yeah. I don't think I can do it just yet, but yeah. He's riding off a name at this
season,
point.
I'd rather play. Like I had to play him because of Jonathan Taylor's injury. Like I did everything I could, but it's a 14-man league with an 8-man bench. Like I had no shot at getting a playable running back, and I did not feel comfortable playing.
Yeah. All righty. That is our show for this week. Hopefully, we gave you guys some good waiver options. Hopefully, we gave you some players that you could drop to make way for those waiver options, and hopefully, this was informative and helpful for you guys. Going into week 10. Next time you hear from us, we'll be on Thursday. We'll be talking Thursday Night Football and any news that we can update you on. I'm sure we'll have an update on Josh Allen and a couple of these other players. If you enjoyed this episode and you're listening on Apple or Spotify, please give us a 5-star rating and a review. If you're watching and listening on YouTube, please drop a like on this video. Share the link with your friends. Share it with your league. Share the love of the Primetime Fantasy Podcast. Thank you guys for listening. Remember to set your waivers. Best of luck in your Week 10 waiver wire.